I love the pink pig on the shelf.
Okay. You already picked that out, huh? I guess it stands out a little bit. Well,
Yeah.
we were my family. We were just in Iceland.
Oh, really?
Have you ever been?
No.
They have a grocery store chain called Bónus, and that's their like logo mascot thing.
It makes me think of the Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Piggly Wiggly?
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys have that up here or
Not around here, no.
No.
That's
We had them
more,
in California, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Whatever. We have everything in California.
We had one in Goldsboro.
Until
when
our
I was
tax
there.
situation in California drives them out of business and then they leave. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess it's like Icelandic Piggly Wiggly. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like you have a black light or something going on back there that makes it's very bright, I guess.
So I got some LEDs on those.
Sweet.
Yeah, so,
I'll stop talking about the pig.
No, it's fine. We're good. We can talk. We can make this whole episode about the bonus pig.
Yeah, we can. We can talk about anything you want. We won't talk about what we were talking about at the end of the meeting in the other room because it's political in nature, and we aren't going to talk about politics at the crosstalk.
No. Well,
Perfect.
It's a crosstalk, but this is. Oh, by the way,
everything's political.
Is this show called
the name of this is
The crosstalk.
Wow.
because we're across from each other.
See?
And it's a crosstalk of ideas versus freight, but it's okay.
It's a great place to have a conversation about pallets.
Oh,
crosstalk.
And why would we be talking about pallets, Mike? Why don't you tell us? Okay, introduce yourself.
Well, we should get the title card and stuff in here.
Oh, the what?
Like the actual introduction to the show.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we just got some theme music.
It's not Rich Rapid.
We don't hear it. I don't.
You can't hear it.
Okay, we can't hear it.
Yeah.
That's all. Oh. Sorry. Wait, there were two knobs that I forgot to turn. Now you can hear yourself.
Oh, that's true. I can.
Is it too loud?
No.
Need less? Need more?
I can hear you and the music.
We can.
And Rich.
Yeah.
Can you mute Rich?
I could.
Yeah, it's very hard to mute me. I will take over his mic.
I need the backup. So.
Yeah. All right.
Well, welcome to the Crosstalk, Mike.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. You got in last night, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a 45-minute flight. We sat on the runway at RDU for an hour and 20 minutes. And then we sat on the runway at Dulles for about an hour. So, yes.
Why?
Did
they tell you?
No.
No, of course not.
No. Just,
Deal with it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The wonders of modern transportation.
Yeah, so the plan was to come by the hotel, drop our stuff off, and then go out and get dinner. But as luck would have it, we just decided to go ahead and stop on the way to the hotel for some steaks.
Well, there you go.
So we went to a Brazilian steakhouse that's about 10 minutes from here.
Fogo de Chao?
Fogo de Chao.
That's a good place in the Reston Town Center.
Yeah.
Across the street from Jackson's.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
And it was wonderful chow.
It is very good. Yeah.
We felt kind of silly wheeling our bags in there, though.
Yeah, but you just need to say we're bringing some food home with us. So.
Right. And this is my to-go box.
Unlimited, you keep just putting it in your bag and you walk out with
Leave the thing green and just open it up and just carve some off. And
little side business for us.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if this pallet thing doesn't work out.
There you go.
Secondhand steak.
Skimming off a Fogo de Chao. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do introductions properly now.
All right.
Hey. We got Mike Jones in here from the Pallet Alliance.
Yep.
Glad you can make it out. Glad we had some time to do this, and you've been a partner of ours for a while, and so I think the last time I saw you, it was at Modex, I think, 2 years ago down in Atlanta, right?
Has it been that long?
It's been a minute, man.
I thought it was a year. It was last year.
No,
2 years?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't. You know what? The last 2-3 years just blurs together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I didn't go to Modex, so
I'm gonna have to Google that later.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Did you go to that ag show in California that we went to?
No, that was some of the other crew. Yeah.
That was entertaining. Visalia, California.
That was an experience.
Yeah. It was the largest trade show I've ever been at, in that it was a massive surface area where they had some of the largest agricultural equipment I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that show looked wild.
Yeah.
It was, we had a dirt floor. Which is great when you're hawking electronics and sanitary pallets. So,
Yeah.
No, it was really great. Was, you put the little tchotchkes out there for them to come by your booth, and there was a gentleman that went by in one of those little automated people mover things, and just kind of rolled up to our booth and then slid all of them over into his thing and just kept going.
Yeah. Now we have that even in more button-down trade shows. So to trick-or-treaters.
Yeah, is that what you call them?
Trick-or-treaters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But
their bags.
I'm
and they
just here for the swag.
Exactly.
No, but it's almost like they have a secondary business. It's like the Fogo de Chao idea. Right? Except they use tchotchkes.
I think we're onto something, gentlemen.
So true story, those little wooden pallets that we give out, those cost a couple bucks each.
Do they?
Yeah. So people will come up, they'll just look right at you, grab the pallet, put it in their bag, just turn and walk away. Those always make me sad. I appreciate it if they at least pretend to be interested.
They make fantastic beer or drink coasters.
I've heard coffee coasters, Rich, but thank you.
Coffee coasters with alcohol in them. But they make really great little coasters. I've got a couple at home for that reason. Now that I know that they cost you a couple bucks a piece, I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
So, you can get them cheaper than that, but we get the high quality ones.
They are.
So
no, it is a nice little tiny block pallet. It's really good.
Yeah. To bring one of those in now for our swag wall over here.
A block.
Oh,
I want a real pallet on the wall.
Real pallets not a whole lot more expensive than the coaster pallets.
Yeah, true.
I don't know where are we gonna fit one of those in here. I don't know.
A pallet?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. We can put it in here.
It's my problem.
We can have some crosstalk.
Figure it out.
But no, yeah, we have been a partner with TPA for many years.
Yep.
But why don't you tell us a bit about what you all do on a regular basis in the pallet world? The pallet world's big, but what do you guys focus on in the space?
So, well, as you said, the pallet space is pretty big, and we do a few different things, but I'd say our primary business activity is we create and manage pallet procurement operations for manufacturing companies, multi-site manufacturing companies primarily. So that involves everything from pallet redesign to quality control, inventory management, supply. If sort and repair operations make sense given the nature of what the business is doing, then we'll set those up for them. Typically, we find when we come in and there's an existing sort and repair operation, we can improve the efficiency of it.
Right.
We do a lot in the way of setting and clarifying standards, what constitutes a pallet that should be just sorted, what can be repaired, and what needs to be replaced. And so we find a lot of times that the systems that are set up to do that, they tend to be sort of inefficient, and there's a lot of times a lack of visibility as well. So the customer knows that 2,000 got picked up, maybe they get 1,400 back, but there's not a lot of information about what's getting broken down and reused versus was it just thrown away, and so. And that could get tricky too, because the companies that are doing the processing of the pallets, they'll work to a price point, but the way that they do that sometimes is they'll just trash more pallets. So if they get too much pressure on them to reduce what they're charging for the pallet repair, you'll wind up with a lot more new pallets.
Oh, they'll just chuck the old pallet.
Yeah, they'll just trash more of them. So because they can reuse the material from those pallets.
A lot of people don't realize the size and scope of the pallet world. Mm-hmm. And, something like 93% of all pallets used are wooden, right? Very few plastic or sometimes metal pallets, right?
Yep.
There's different types of pallets that are used. But then the wooden pallets come in all types of different sizes, depending on what you're manufacturing and what you're moving, right? So are some of the programs you guys running for some of those more specialized pallets versus, your standard, like what is a standard pallet size?
4840.
That's the standard size.
It's like the Chet Blue Block pallet.
Oh, got it.
But they
Yeah.
make that same pallet with stringers or runners, as
Right.
people call them sometimes. So, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, but I mean, 93% of them are wood. Fun little stat: 40% of all hardwood that is fell in the U.S. goes towards building pallets every year.
Well, they're not cut down specifically to make pallets.
No, it's just that it goes towards that.
Ends up there, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, so you guys being able to optimize these programs for people, optimizing repair means less pallets or
Sure.
less new pallets are needed,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Which saves trees.
Oh yeah. So we've been in business since 1995. I think we're the oldest pallet program management company in the U.S. So, and we've had some of our customers since we started. On average, our contract customers have been with us for north of 18 years.
Wow.
So, we're very good at what we do. We work with some of the largest manufacturing companies in America, and we're always growing as well. So, it's an area where we have a lot of expertise. We have 4 engineers on staff from the Virginia Tech's Wood Science and Pallet program. It's one of 2 pallet engineering programs in the country. So we have a lot of pallet nerds on staff, and it's a little weird, but we actually love pallets. So they are fascinating. I mean, they seem very very simple on the surface, but when you get into the engineering and the opportunities to help people become more efficient, be it through design or operational efficiencies you can introduce. It's great because like just about everything ships on pallets. So.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, people think of intermodal containers when they think of, you think of transportation, you see these big intermodal containers on ships and everything. But what do you think is inside those intermodal containers? They're pallets of goods, right? So the pallet, and even those standard sizes, I know Europe has a different size, standard size, but the 48 by 40 pallet in the United States is its kind of standard size because of the way it fits in a 52-foot truck, right?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is it is a standard size in the sense that it's 48 by 40, but whereas the EU standard pallets have a very specific configuration, there are all kinds of different ways to skin the cat of the 4840. So the Chet product is standard. A lot of those block pallets are more or less standard, but they're, you see all kinds of variations in the actual 4840 market. And, that variance gets greater when you enter the used 4840 market.
Oh,
so
I bet.
There's this notional GMA grade A standard and B, but it's all over the place.
What's the craziest thing you've ever been asked to like help palletize? Because I know you do a lot of like standard stuff, but I know you also do some custom, more custom pallet production, right? What's the craziest story you've got around a challenging thing you've been asked to help build pallets for?
I don't know that I have a lot of crazy stories. You tend to hear more of those in crating. You'll get really interesting requests for things that you can crate, but pallets are, I will say that the most entertaining thing that's happened in fairly recent history is we were brought out to California to help a customer in the lighting space improve their pallet cost. And they took us out to their yard and showed us what they were getting. And the price they gave us, like, you can't be getting pallets for that. And so these were Frankenpallets. I mean, the runners had screws in them, and there were just straight up broken boards. I mean, they were literally the worst pallets that I've ever seen being used by somebody, and they were actually paying for these things. And I thought it was the scrap heap they were showing me, but it was
their production pallets.
It was actually the production pallets, and we had to tell them, like, if this is okay with you, I can't help you. Like, I would never ever put a product on something like this, but if you're willing to take absolute trash, then that's. My hat's off to you. Hopefully nobody gets tetanus or splinters.
Most of those wood pallets, I mean, they're built with nails, right? And so some of the issues there's probably issues with the use of those because they are going to get damaged, as you were talking about repair. Why repair things? A lot of people don't realize that if I'm a manufacturer and I'm shipping a product to a customer of mine, and I palletize that product that I'm shipping to them, I'm charging them for that pallet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just giving it away.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to be factored into the cost of the goods they receive, no differently than if I'm coordinating transportation, they're paying for transportation too, but they're paying for that pallet.
Yeah.
So then it effectively transfers ownership, unless it's like a Shep pallet or something like that, which is leased and ultimately owned by Brambles Shep. But if it's just a wooden pallet and it's not a closed loop like that, like you've got some of your customers doing that, they're transferring ownership.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of used pallets out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what happens next is really interesting, and it's kind of all over the place. So for, a small place like a 7-Eleven or somebody like that, it becomes a trash disposal problem. I mean, if you're an apartment complex that gets a pallet of air filters every, 6 months or a year, you get calls from people like that are asking you, hey, can you come and pick my pallet up? And it's like,
Right,
that's great. That's not exactly what I do, but
Yeah.
they're
My
a pallet.
one pallet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're, it's funny because, and then it's all relative, right? So someone will call you up and they've got all these pallets out back and, I'm sure they're worth a lot of money. Can you come and get them? And you're like, well, how many pallets are there? I got 22 pallets. Like, well, that's you're not going to send a truck to get those.
Sure.
And, yeah. So good luck with that.
Yeah. When you stack pallets on pallets, I think you can fit like 500 or more pallets in a truck.
Yeah. 540. And so, on the other end of the spectrum, those you have big distribution centers, like say an Amazon distribution center that's receiving and depalletizing, 1,000 pallets a day or something like that. And that is saleable. And so, especially during COVID and, I would say up until about, a year ago, give or take, the contracts to recover those pallets, they got absurdly expensive. I mean, people were paying $9 or $10 for a used 4840 pallet that you could probably buy for, $6 right now. But again, that waste stream has inherent value to the companies that are receiving them.
Where you get that company you were talking about, the lighting company that would take the worst possible pallet.
Yeah, that
because
pallet
it was super cheap.
That pallet is too good for. I mean, they would see it and ask you to take the pallets out back and beat them with a sledgehammer before you brought them in. So.
Yeah, it makes our other pallets look too good.
yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, something I wanted to get your thoughts on a little bit, because it's been something that I've been thinking about a bit since we talked about it on the conference floor at Modex a little bit, was kind of like the the sustainability angle in your line of work and the increasing pressures that companies across the board are feeling to do more in that area, make their operations more sustainable. And so I wanted to get your thoughts broadly on it, but also specifically around like wooden pallets and sustainability. And I remember discussing this with you, and you shared a thought around wooden pallets actually, if done right and put into circular rotation, can actually be quite sustainable, and that being kind of counterintuitive, right? Because you just think, oh, we're just chopping trees and making them into pallets, and they're used once and they're gone. So I wanted to get you to talk about that and how sustainability fits into your sales and your operations.
Sure. It's complicated.
Yeah.
If I'm being perfectly honest. So my company, we're material agnostic. So, I don't care what the pallet is made out of at the end of the day, if it's what makes the most sense for the customer. Right. So I've had something to do with plastic pallets over the years, and plastic pallets makers and reps will tell you that they're far greener than wooden pallets are, which, sounds counterintuitive since it's made of petroleum and, but can be ground down and, melted and reused in a pallet. And one of the things that gets touted is in a laboratory, a plastic pallet will last far longer than a wooden pallet. So, they have these tests where they pick the pallet up, put the pallet down,
do that a
pick it
billion
up, move
times.
it. Yeah. And, you can get hundreds of trips out of a plastic pallet, in the same pallet. And I'm just making something up here, say 20 or something before, you start having fastener issues and this kind of thing. But the challenge is once you get out into the world, the laboratory conditions no longer prevail. And if a plastic pallet becomes damaged in some way, like you have a fracture in the plastic, you can't use that pallet anymore because it loses its, a lot of its strength. Whereas a wooden pallet, if it gets struck by a forklift or something like that, you can just replace the component. If a deck board breaks, you can put a new board on it. If the stringer breaks, heaven forbid, you can replace the string as well.
Pallets are like two pieces that come together, right?
Yeah.
So that whole piece is basically toast.
Or one.
Right.
And so from the standpoint of the actual durability of the pallet, I would say it's more of a mixed bag. And I said, the plastic pallet, you can grind it down and recycle the materials. Well, with a wooden pallet, even if the pallet itself is not salvageable, the deck boards can be used again, and maybe the stringers can be cut down and reused as well. So the end of the life for a pallet is mulch. At the end of the day,
Sure, right?
If it doesn't wind up in a landfill, and we try to prevent that as much as possible, it becomes mulch. So one of the things that we consider, and most of the pallets we sell are wood pallets, and a lot of that has just, if it's a non-standard 4840, are people using enough of them to justify a mold? Is it something that's easily, is it a pallet that's easily molded and this kind of thing? For a lot of different configurations, wood makes more sense as a material. Maybe there's no chance you're going to get it back or something like that. And it's just too expensive to make a plastic pallet for a one-way use. So the pallet itself, and this goes back to something Rich was saying about 40% of hardwood going into pallets, is the pallet. Nobody cuts a tree down to make a pallet. So it's not the case that a tree gets felled and they cut it into pallet material. It's a waste product of cutting trees down for furniture or building materials. So basically they cut, a square out of the middle, and what comes off the sides, the cants, that's traditionally what's cut up and used to make pallet material. So from that standpoint, you're actually making use of a waste product to build something that's productive. And, for as long as those pallets are in circulation, you've got carbon capture, you're supporting tree farmers. There's a lot of, there's a lot of good if you're not part of, somebody who has a vested interest in, saying that pallets are not sustainable. So, but again, and I've heard arguments on both sides. I've heard from plastic people, and that makes a certain kind of sense.
Yep.
If you make a few assumptions that the wood people will tell you are entirely unrealistic assumptions. And then, the flip side, there've been a lot of studies that support the idea that wooden pallets are green friendly and this sort of thing. And the plastic people will look at those, somewhat askance. And
but it's all about the way you manage the asset that is those pallets, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're consuming and using a single pallet, whether that be plastic or wood, that's not a green friendly solution, right? Reusable pallets or pallets that are managed in a program like you do for your customers,
the ones where we can do it,
where you can do that, right? I mean, they're going to have one-way shipments too. And for those, you use probably a different type of pallet than the ones that are being used over and over again, kind of internally, I guess, if you will.
Well, one thing I would say to that is even one-way pallets, wooden pallets, there's still value for that pallet after the one trip.
No doubt.
There are definitely big stores that get lots of different footprints, and those pallets are picked up by pallet recyclers, and a lot of that material gets reused.
Just overall, as a world, we buy 5 billion pallets a year, or I should say, we produce 5 billion pallets a year.
Okay.
For 40 billion pallet trips. In the U.S., it's around 2 billion pallets that we need a year for about 11 billion of that 40 billion pallet trips. That sounds like that's it, but those are new pallets, right? So we're buying pallets. We need that many pallets every year, and so in a sense, they are going through their life cycle.
Yeah.
average number of uses of pallets is 2.5 on wood. I mean, that's spread across, right? So there's a lot of them that are used maybe once, right? But we've gotten a lot better over the last like 20, 25 years in reusing these things and having programs where we reuse these things. The ESG initiatives and things like that have made people more conscious of this stuff. The cost of material, especially during the COVID times, the cost of wood went up pretty high. And so it made people very conscious that, you know, we what can we do here? These are these are costs that we need to control. And whether we control that by reuse or we control that by what we buy, right? Can we buy used wooden pallets? Can we reuse wooden pallets that come in? I remember we were at one distribution center for the food distribution group, and you know, in their warehouse, they had this rack above all their bay doors, or outbound bay doors, with stacks of pallets up there. And I said, "What are all those up there?" He said, "That's my buffer supply." He said, "So what happens is I get inbound deliveries of product, and we have outbound shipments we need to do. And that's my buffer in the event that we have an asymmetry with how much is coming in versus what needs to go out. I get that buffer." And
You got something coming in that's like floor loaded, and then,
well, that, or they just have a lot going out. Right? They have a lot going out. They you know, they get into an asymmetric situation. So it keeps enough up there. I think he said for 2 months. So he had enough buffer for 2 months. But otherwise, they try and sell those pallets back, right? The wooden pallets, they can't store them. It's not worth just storing pallets for them. They're just food distribution center. But they keep enough buffer, and then they sell the remainder of it to pallet reclamation companies like you were talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's been interesting to see is the way that dynamic has been changing as the price of those, you know, we call them cores, but it's basically that 4840 that you've gotten that's been used, and you want somebody to do something with it. So we had some initiatives we were looking at, some of them with food distribution companies, where we wanted to help them improve the quality of their inbound pallets. Try some things like you know, a plastic option, because they were having issues with nails getting on the, you know, warehouse floors and messing up the tires on the forklifts, and they were getting a lot of broken boards and this kind of thing. And so we suggested, well, let's try this this heavy duty plastic pallet on some of your inbound shipments, and, you know, see if that solves some of these problems. Well, of course it will. I mean, whatever issues you might experience with a plastic pallet, you're not going to have broken deck boards, and it's not going to, you know, land nails on your warehouse floors. And it made sense in just about every respect. I mean, even from a cost standpoint, I mean, you could do it in a way that it's more or less cost neutral for these companies, maybe even saving a little bit of money. But they were making so much money off of those cores that they were selling out of the back that they had no interest in solving their other problems, even in a cost neutral way, because then they were going to lose I mean, I think at the time they were making $5 or $6 per pallet core. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, since prices have started to return to sanity, you know, whether companies can make those decisions in a different way. Because at the end of the day, what makes the most sense, you know, the economics matter. Of course they matter, you know, and people are, the first question anytime you talk about helping them with their pallets is, what does it cost? You know, and you can do all kinds of things with smart pallets now. You can introduce IoT into supply chains. You can do things like monitoring the condition of inbound cargo without using temp tails or something like that. You know, you can get advance notice of deliveries to help you schedule dock time. You can get in-transit alerts for things like temperature if you're, you know, using the right solution. And those things come at a cost. But when you look at the savings that you can bring into your supply chain, you know, what you could be doing if you could reject loads in transit, you know, instead of having that dock time be taken up, you know, just something that simple. I mean, there's an opportunity to really introduce some efficiency and savings in other places. You can save a lot more money than whatever the, you know, small upcharge in using a pallet that has that kind of capability. But, you know, a lot of times it's a pallet guy's job. Like, what is the pallet cost? oh, well, it's 75 cents more, but you're going to save all this. What does it cost? Oh, more? You know,
It's somebody
that
else's
stops
budget,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Or somebody else's cost savings.
Yeah. And
that,
I would say that tends to be one of the obstacles that you run into is it becomes a much more strategic initiative, you know, where you can look for those green savings, you know, efficiencies in the supply chain. Like, you know, you once you have visibility into what's going on at the pallet level, you know, with your product and the pallets themselves, it's all kinds of opportunities to find strategic savings that a lot of times will dwarf whatever the nominal increase in the cost of a pallet is. But getting in the door to have those conversations and you know, even having the pallet guy be part of that conversation, it can be tricky, you know, because I understand that person's job. I work with that person all the time.
Right.
And a lot of times that's where we make some of our hay is at least strategic savings on pallet purchasing. But, you know, changing the game and bringing something like a logistics visibility platform in there, that's the challenge. And, you know, I'd say, that's one of the reasons I spend so much time hanging out with Rich and Company is that is the best outcome for everybody, getting that visibility at the pallet level. But how do you do that?
Sure.
Yeah, and it's because that's what we've been doing for years together, is trying to marry some of the capabilities of what we've developed in our software platform, right? The ability of simplifying supply chains through the measurement and automation and collaboration that our platform provides. How does that factor in a pallet? Well, part of measurement may be a device, right? A real-time GPS device and that sort of thing. And many of our customers use those on their product. So they put the sensor on their product and they ship it and they know where their product is as it's moving. And when we were talking to you, and this has been a vision of yours before we were even working on this, as if the device was in the pallet itself, well, they're already moving a pallet. So there's no new process there. But if the device is in the pallet and the pallet is being used over and over again, that sensor is being used over and over again. And now instead of a sensor being used once, or, you know, maybe, you know, or having to get the sensor back, use it again, recharge it, you're just using a pallet over and over like you're doing, but the sensor in the pallet is giving you visibility of what's on the pallet, right? So you're effectively saying, okay, product, whatever that order is, it's on these 7 pallets. Each of those pallets has a sensor in it. You're getting pallet level tracking of that order of the product that's moving on there, what the temperature conditions at the pallet level, which is important in a refrigerated truck. Are we getting even airflow, right, in a truck? It would be cost prohibitive to do that with even a temp tail. They usually put, you know, a couple a truck, 1 or 2 per truck. They don't put one at every pallet. But if you could put a device in every pallet that actually gave you the temperature at the pallet level, you could do that. And you could do it in a cost-effective way. But you're absolutely right. The minute the pallet changes from a means of transport or conveyance or whatever you want to consider it to an information source, there's different people that care about that. So the pallet purchaser doesn't care about that data. I mean, they don't care about the product temperature on that. You know, somebody else does.
Yeah.
The quality department does. The buyer from the supplier does. The people working those dock doors to be able to plan when personnel are going to come in, right? So the people managing the warehouses, they care from an inbound visibility perspective. There's all kinds of ways in which we can simplify the overall supply chain with this, but in order to make that argument, you have to go up higher in the organization to somebody where all of those things tier up.
Yeah.
And it's been the challenge.
Yeah,
I think.
like a multi-champion sale.
Well, no, it's like the COO. Like you have to get up to a person that all these different things roll up into and say, yeah, well, you're going to pay more there, but we're going to save so much more here that organizationally this makes sense. So you're either going to find somebody at a low level in the organization that cares enough about their organization that they see beyond their role, which is rare in most companies, or you're going to end up having to basically come in at a higher level or work your way up to a higher level, and it takes time.
Yeah.
But the technology is absolutely there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And
Well, and I'll say too, one of the things that we bump into is there is a lot of status quo bias. So essentially, if the person that's at that, top pallet job, or, maybe right below the top pallet job, I mean, a lot of it is he's been doing his job a certain way for a long time. And, he might get flack every once in a while because the pallet prices went up more quickly than he thought they were going to. But at the end of the day, that's kind of how he's been doing his job for a long time, and he's got a job. Well, you bring in something different and you're like, I know it's a little scary, but it's better. Trust me. All of a sudden you're introducing risk into his life.
Right.
And then the other part, and this is completely natural, and I'm not speaking ill of anybody, but to say that people can be a little territorial sometimes too.
Sure,
And so they see all of a sudden the pallet is getting, its scope enlarged to where it's touching IT and it's touching quality control and things like that. And then there's the question of, is this still going to be my baby? Because sometimes people hate the baby, but it's still their baby. They want the baby. Don't take their baby.
they embrace the ugly baby. They're okay with it. Yeah.
It's like they're, the mother, the baby's always beautiful, right?
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
No, so the one of the things that we've talked about is the device being in the pallet also lets you know where the pallet is, right? So aside from the in-transit visibility, kind of fundamentally having a device in the pallet also lets you know about that asset.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of value you can get in a pallet programs, like some of the programs you currently run for your customers, where you may be doing things based on, shared aggregate data they're sending you of where pallets ship, from, you're getting maybe all the order information of flows to whatever level you can believe that data.
What makes you think I get that data?
I'm just hopeful for you, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't want you to suffer any more than you
I don't
do.
get that data, but it would be nice to have it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're I'm not going to cut you off, but your point is a great one. If I have real time visibility into where the pallets are, how quickly they're moving, this kind of thing, you could accommodate the same number of shipments with far fewer pallets.
Right.
I mean, it's just a matter, of course, you can accelerate the movement.
Which is a sustainability hit, or in a positive way, right? Because you're doing more with less pallets, or at least the amount you need to do with less pallets. So it's a resource optimization play.
Yeah.
And so that same data can give you that. And I think what's nice about that, at least, is first and foremost, they need that. They need to redistribute pallets. It's a question of when, right?
Yeah.
When to do reverse logistics on the pallets, pick them up, clean them, everything like that.
Well, another dimension that gets introduced is when you talk about expanding this technology into pool opportunities, replacing some of the, more conspicuous 4840 pool provider solutions is, these pallets, when they become IoT enabled, become serialized. And so you are going to get billed for not 540 pallets that got delivered, less the 528 that wound up where they were supposed to be, getting a bill for that delta. You're going to get a bill for these specific 540 pallets that got dropped off, and the 522 or whatever that made it where they were supposed to. And oh, by the way, the ones that you're getting billed for as lost or tied up longer than they're supposed to be, this is where they are. So these are the remediation steps you can take. Either get those back into circulation, or hey, if you want to keep them, pay for them. But it's that measure of accountability. Now it's not just you and me sitting across a table and me handing you a spreadsheet and saying, this is what happened.
We're going to arm wrestle over it. Yeah.
Because even if I'm telling you the truth, and you're going to be skeptical because your thought's going to be prove it. And I'll say, I can't but this person said they only got this number. And you could say, well, how do I know that he's telling you the truth? Prove to me I owe you that money, and I can't do it. And so the best case scenario is wind up not liking each other, but it
Yeah,
works
trust erosion and
economically. But this is, again, serialized IoT pallets is a fundamentally different proposition. And it's a different proposition for both of us. It's now I can substantiate what I'm telling you. And if I'm wrong, you can demonstrate that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have to substantiate what I'm telling you, right? That's,
Sure.
that's the other side of it.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring up some of the existing rental pool companies and some of the larger ones in that those pallets don't turn that often.
Yeah.
Those wooden pallets might turn 4 or 5 times a year. So you think from an efficiency perspective, if you can increase the number of uses to even once a month, you bring into a third the number of pallets you need in order to do the same number of shipments. And of those 11 billion things that are moving on a pallet every year in the United States, if we can bring that into a third, I mean, this is a massive impact.
Sure.
Because it's such a large industry, or the 40 billion moves that we do globally. So IoT enabled information allow us to both trust, we build trust upon, right? It's a foundation. That data is a foundation upon which we can build trust. But it's also then something that we can use to actually automate on, because it's very hard to automate on stuff that you're trying to synthesize out of the air, right? Just kind of pull together and guess. And if you dispatch a truck and you have an assumption of how many pallets are at a place and they're not, that's waste.
Yeah.
Hard waste, because you're talking about fuel and everything else for that truck. So there's a lot of optimization that can go on with that data. I think that then plus the logistics visibility, the future stuff, right? Which is here today. It's just a question of how many people are ready for it, right? Who would want to be able to integrate that. I think we start with the resource side, resource optimization. It's an ROI.
Yeah.
Just you're doing more or you're doing the same amount you need with less. And so you're saving money.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. Even if there's an incrementally more expense on the pallet, the cost you're saving dwarfs that incremental cost. So it nets out to saving you money.
Yeah.
That's ROI. ROI from like very soon into the program. It's like month to month ROI. You're saving money every single month.
Yeah.
So I think then you can layer on some of these additional capabilities of what these things bring to the table.
Sure.
When you're ready. Because the first level of that doesn't really require much from the customer perspective. It's something that you as a company, for example, TPA as a company could utilize that data to optimize your customers' use of their pallets, optimize the rebalancing of pallet inventory, showing them where they're bleeding pallets or where things aren't going the way they expect them to. Sure. People aren't following procedures, the like. So, it lets you run a more efficient operation for your customers, saving them money, but then leverages or creates these opportunities for you to offer them new capabilities, things they hadn't even thought of. Yeah. Because pallets don't do that today. We don't think of pallets as being a source of information.
No.
Nope. So what's your typical customer profile like? We've gotten like way out in the weeds here on tech, which is great because like that's our wheelhouse. But if somebody is listening to this and they want to maybe get in touch with you, like what's your typical customer look like? Industries, size, kind of problems they're trying to solve, and
Sure. So our kind of wheelhouse customers, I guess, are multi-site manufacturing companies, wide range of manufacturing companies. Building products tend to be good fits for what we do because they tend to use a lot of non-standard size pallets.
Okay.
So there tend to be opportunities for redesign in some cases, but different sourcing. So one of our larger new customers that we're in the process of implementing is actually a great sort of what's the word I'm looking for? it's a great example of where we can have value, which is they have a lot of manufacturing facilities, north of 100, and a lot of those facilities have been acquired by acquisitions.
Sure.
In some cases, they have 20 different pallet designs and styles, doing the exact same job, carrying the exact same product. In our experience, there's one or two designs that are the best designs to do that job, and all the other ones have waste for some reason, or they're suboptimally designed. Compounding the difficulty of the situation is that even the pallets that are the same have different item numbers within their system, and each facility is managing its own P&L typically. And they have regional overseers, and those people report to somebody else. If you were to call somebody at their corporate headquarters and say, how much did you spend on pallets last year? Can't tell you.
Right.
They can call places who have imperfect data and assemble something, but they don't have a good number. They can't tell you what percentage of that was made up from which product group and which product, and how many of those were, reused pallets and how many were new. Their pricing is all over the place too, because it wasn't strategically managed. When we first started talking with them, they, said that their pricing had gotten so out of control that they felt like they were buying golden pallets. They actually said that. We don't know what these guys are doing, and as it turns out, some of the prices were too high. Now, some made sense. I mean, legitimately, the price of wood went through the roof, and so everybody was paying more. But they would have 4 or 5 different vendors to a facility with pricing all over the place, and so I'll tie all that together, because there's something you can do programmatically to address all of those issues. But I'll say, so the tool that company and a lot of other companies have to deal with the sense that we're being overcharged is to conduct an RFP.
Sure.
So they'll take their pallet spend out into the marketplace once a year, once every 2 years, and they waste all kinds of resources on this exercise because they have to call all these different places and get their most up-to-date information, which is always out of date, specs that aren't right, this sort of thing. And the person conducting the RFP is rarely a pallet expert. Right. What this does effectively, typically, is they may get very good prices at that moment in time at that facility. And that's what they're going to typically benchmark against. And some pallet manufacturers are really upstanding citizens. They come in at a reasonable price at which they can do the business in a sustainable way. And they're going to acquire the business and keep it more or less the same kind of margins and this sort of thing. And you see that sometimes. And a lot of times you see something different, which is somebody wants the business, so they'll buy the business. And then a month later, or 2 months later, or 3 months later, because pallet prices change, they're going to get theirs, and then you wind up having to conduct another RFP that's hugely resource inexpensive and to reset that price. And for some portion of time between those, you've been paying too much for your pallets. So even though you have savings on the front end, a lot of times that you can point to and say, see, the RFP worked, by the time it's gotten out of line, you're way worse off than if you had done it in a strategically smart way in setting up your supply chain. And so, so what our customer, the customers that are actually our customers, what their experience looks like is we have a Tableau dashboard. We customize it for different customers, but they can go to it. And the first thing they see is a program-wide dashboard, and it has all of their facilities on a map, and the dots are different sized and different colored based on the product groups and all this kind of thing. And it has, by product group, what the spend is. How that spend, relates to last year's spend, what the trend is, all these kinds of things, right? Average prices, whatever information they want to see, quality KPIs, things like that. But their total program-wide spend, and they can click on a drop down and pick, do they want to see the last year? Do they want to see, this year versus last year, last quarter, last month, year to date, all those kinds of things. They can just click on the date and it changes the dashboard to the data to reflect that. They can click on a facility and see that same, facility specific information for all those kinds of things. Typically what we'll do too is we'll show their price and the relevant lumber index to show how their price is tracking,
okay,
on average with the with the lumber market, we'll have a standardized spec catalog. So we'll go through all of their facilities, look at all the different pallets they're using, look at all the different products and say, okay, like, this is the spec you want to be using here. Is there an opportunity to use a repairable pallet or something like that? But we'll go through and make sure all the pallets that they're using are the right pallets. And then we do the buying for them. So, if there's an inventory management component, we do that. But we're always out in the market. We're in the market every day talking to suppliers. So we know what's going on with the pricing, and we make sure that our customers, they're paying what they need to pay to make sure that they don't run out of pallets. But we're also making sure they get those decreases when it makes sense to get those decreases. So we don't have customers call us up after a year and say, what's going on with our pallets? You need to take this out into the market. That never happens because our pricing makes sense relative to
the continuous process.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm going to have to step out.
You got a dip?
I got a dip. I got a call. You guys keep going. You're about to finish up, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I just need to jump on a call that I realized that I am late for.
oh my.
I apologize for that. But
You're good.
it's been great chatting, Mike. So thanks. I'm going to let you guys finish up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'll wrap.
So, yeah. So this is the way we roll.
Awesome. Good seeing you, Rich.
So yeah, what I got from that was it's not just the pallet itself,
Correct.
right? It's about the pallet within the operations, and especially if you've got operations that are spread across multiple different locations, distribution centers, what have you, where pallets are moving in and out, and where like you've got maybe each of those individual locations might be like managing their pallet spend themselves, or they've got a budget and it's just like all over the place. And you can come in and be like, okay, if we think about this holistically and we think about this and how it all interfaces with your business, we can, it's not merely just like a operational optimization. It's not just a budget optimization. It's not just a running an RFP for you every 6 months.
Yeah.
It's like continuous improvement. Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we say that what we provide is visibility, control, and strategic savings. So,
Yeah.
Our customers always know what's going on with their pallet spend. That Tableau dashboard I mentioned is self-service, so they can go on anytime they want and they can see what's happening. Some of our customers love to do that, and we see a lot of use of that Tableau dashboard.
Yeah.
That tends to be the exception rather than the rule, because the easiest thing to do is to just call us up and ask for something, and we're more than happy to produce it. And I'll say that's the other thing too, is they have one number they can call for any of the pallet information. So if they want to know what's going on at the facility, they don't have to call the facility, hopefully catch the pallet guy, maybe not catch the pallet guy, and maybe he's got the spend information at his fingertips, and maybe he has to go talk to the accounting guy. I mean, instead of that, they just call one number. And the same for the facility. So if the facility wants pallets or there's any kind of issue, which it's the pallet industry, every once in a while there's a quality issue or something like that. Sure. They just have one number to call, and that's something that our customers tell us that they really value. I think I mentioned, but we've been in business since 1995. Some of our customers we've had since we started, and those customers, some of them are quite big customers. They get calls all the time from other companies, and consistently nobody can deliver what we deliver, which is that fully integrated, transparent, strategic pallet program that really delivers savings year over year.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
And any shout outs from you before we wrap up? I'm going to hand you the mic.
You shouldn't have thrown that in my lap, but no, not really. Everybody at Pallet Alliance, they're great. I'm not here talking to you guys about smart pallets if we don't have a company that does the pallet thing exceptionally well,
right.
And so that sort of allows us to branch out and become forward looking as far as what's next in the marketplace, and how can we introduce that.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I'll play our outro music here. Yeah, it's been great having you. I'm glad you got to come out, and hope you enjoyed your time here and in the crosstalk. So, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. Glad to be here.
Yeah. All right. Later, man.
Later.